It's Deana, and today I am making bánh, which is a Vietnamese baguette. The word bánh also means bread in general. This recipe is user-friendly because it is a cold-proof as well as handmade with no machine. My recipe only calls for 6 ingredients and is similar to a traditional French baguette. The Vietnamese baguette is known for its soft inside and light, thinly crispy crust on the outside. And when bitten into, it gives you the beautiful balance between a soft, chewy texture and a crispy crunch. In order to make these 5-inch baguettes, you will need the following tools: a bread pan for baguettes, a rolling pin, a spray bottle for water, and something to cut your dough with. To begin making your dough, you will need 3.5 cups of bread flour. The recipe will work with all-purpose flour as well, but the bread flour gives you a very nice chewy texture. Add 1.5 teaspoons of salt to the flour. In a different section, add 2 teaspoons of sugar, and in a different section, 1 tablespoon of instant yeast. It is important to keep the yeast, the sugar, and salt apart because the salt deactivates the yeast while the sugar activates the yeast. Whisk everything well together. We'll begin to add the wet ingredients now. You'll need 1.25 cup of water, but add only a little bit at a time since we don't know if we'll need all of the liquid or not. Absorption varies from brand to brand of flour. Stop adding water when the dough begins to come together and most of it is moist. When you have used half of your water, stop and add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter before adding more liquid to your mixture. Mix in the butter as much as possible and check the moisture level of your dough. Add more water to the dough if it is on the drier side until almost all the flour has bind together. If you accidentally add too much water, add in a tablespoon of flour to dry up the dough mixture a bit. It is important to add the liquid in slowly and bit by bit. Begin hand kneading the dough when most of the flour is moist. When the bowl appears to be much cleaner and most of the dough is not sticking to the bowl anymore, remove the dough from the bowl. Add a little bit of olive oil to your hand and the dough, and now you will begin hand kneading the dough for 15 minutes. Set a timer and knead for 15 minutes. It is important that you knead for a full 15 minutes to build up the gluten by rolling the dough forward and pushing the top into the center repeatedly. Also rotating the dough and continuing to push forward and push in. During this process, the gluten is being formed, and the dough will become smoother as you work. Your arm will be also getting a workout during this process. The gluten is the structure that enables the bread to hold its shape and form. The gluten also makes for a very nice chewy, soft bread. If your gluten is not strong enough to hold the bread's structure, you will end up with a deflated and dense piece of bread. After 15 minutes of continuous kneading, the dough will become super smooth and has a nice dense structure. Add oil to the mixing bowl. This will allow the dough to rise and slip and move upwards in the bowl without getting stuck. You'll also need to oil the ball dough. Tightly wrap the bowl with some cling wrap and refrigerate overnight until it's time to shape and bake up to eat with your meal. This is called the cold proofing process and allows your dough to proof and rise within 24 hours of resting in a cold refrigerator. This is a fail-proof method for those of us who keep forgetting that we are making bread and end up overproofing. Here's what the dough looks like the next day. The dough will be cold and it will need to rest at room temperature for 30 minutes. Once it's rested, remove the dough and remove the air. You're going to pull the outer layer and tuck it underneath, and do that a couple of times until you have something that appears to be a smooth surface. Divide your ball of dough into 8 equal pieces. From this point, you can actually divide it into 8 wedges, which will make it easier to work with. And that's what I normally do, but for some reason I decided to do a log, which is actually harder to keep the wedges the same size. Whether you decide to cut it up into 8 wedges or into half and then log it and then into 4, it's up to you. They will all work just fine. Let the dough rest under cling wrap for 10 minutes before trying to roll it out. The gluten needs to relax so that you can roll it easily. Tuck each roll into a smooth ball and then roll it into a wedge shape. Afterwards, you're going to tuck the narrow end into the larger end, pinch the edges together, and then give it a good nice tight roll to shape it into that classic baguette shape. Place each finished shaped dough piece onto your baguette pan. The second and final proofing will be in the oven with a hot water bath. This will allow the dough to rise within 20 to 30 minutes. Spray each roll with water to prevent the skin from drying out, which allows the dough to rise properly. After 20 to 30 minutes in the hot water bath, the dough will have risen 2 times its original size. Remove from the oven and preheat your oven to 400 Fahrenheit with the water bath inside. Now it's time to create the classic slit for our French Vietnamese baguettes. Using either a sharp razor or knife, make a 45-degree angle slit into the center of your dough, about ½ an inch deep. Spray the slit with some water. This is what's going to keep it moist and allow it to continue to rise. Take your time to gently create slits in your dough. The oven will take a while to warm up and it needs to maintain its warmth at 400 degrees for a few minutes before you put in the dough. While the oven is heating up or maintaining its heat, keep spraying the center of the bread and lightly spray the outside of the bread so that it can continue to rise. You'll see that the split will become wider and wider as it's rising. It looks so gorgeous even before it's baked. I believe baking bread and being able to make bread is one of those things that is so satisfying. It makes you feel like an accomplished person. And unfortunately, you may fail many times before you are successful, but don't stop trying. The oven is ready. You will be baking your bread anywhere between 20 to 24 minutes. It just depends on your oven's temperature. My oven runs a little hotter, so I usually bake between 18 to 20 or 22 minutes. If it takes your oven to bake things up a little bit longer than usual, then you'll need to bake up to 24 minutes. Set a timer for 5 minutes. You'll give your bread a quick spray after 5 minutes of baking so that it can keep its thin crust as well as rise a little bit more. The spraying and hot water bath allows this bread to create a thin, crispy crust. Set the timer for another 5 minutes. It's time to remove the water bath so that our bread has an opportunity to crisp up and turn golden brown. Set the timer for anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes for the final baking. During the last couple of minutes of baking, I always check my bread to see if it's done or not. And it appears to be done, and I'm going to remove it earlier than the timer was set for. You'll know that the bread is done because it has turned a beautiful golden brown in the oven. It means it is ready. Baking fresh bread creates a beautiful smell throughout your whole house. The fresh aroma of baked bread is so divine. My kids always run over to see if they can get a bite. This is what the bread looks like before I butter the tops. Buttering the bread is completely optional. If you would like to do it, use half a tablespoon of melted butter and brush it onto the hot, fresh baked bread. It will create a beautiful shiny gloss and give you a buttery flavor. This baguette makes an awesome sandwich as well as a great companion to any stew because it can absorb all the liquid and flavor from your stew, creating a beautiful mixture of flavor and textures. Thank you for baking with me today, and I hope you continue to practice to become the master chefs in your own home. If you have enjoyed your time with me today, don't forget to leave me a comment below in the comment section and click subscribe to my channel as well as the like button to this video. Written recipes available at my website linked below. Until next time, my friends, goodbye.